friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Well, I recently got some questions about my Janome Treadle machine, so I thought it'd be great to bring this up again because I haven't talked about my machine in quite some time. Now, today's not going to be showing you how to use a treadle machine. I already have a couple of videos out there on that, so I'll link back to the more recent of the two that I think has the better lighting so you can see how I do it. But I will explain quickly that there is a little bit more involved simply because you got to use your feet to power the machine, and it does require getting a good spin on the wheel back here. It doesn't matter if it's this kind of machine or the antique ones that have the much bigger wheel, which is one of the things I love about the antique machines is they have a big wheel, so it's a lot easier to grab and just get a good spin on it. But it's one of those things you just develop muscle memory and it gets easy. Now, for me, I have very little feet. I wear a 3.5 to 4 typically in kids' shoes. So for me, it's easiest to use both my feet and to do it wearing shoes because of the surface area. The grading on the pad can be a little tough on bare feet. I've done it in sock feet, bare feet. Don't like the way it feels. I prefer wearing shoes. It gives me a better hold and gives me actually a little more surface area to work with both my feet. Some people prefer to treadle with one foot. Some people prefer to do it barefoot or sock-footed. It's all going to be up to you and what feels best to you. There's not one right way to do it. But what matters is the timing and the rhythm that you develop. And you can get pretty quick at running a treadle machine. I was actually surprised when I first started sewing with this thing, how fast I could sew. I could sew just as fast on this as I could with an electric machine. Now, I have had this machine for right at 9.5 years at the time I'm shooting this video. I'm shooting this video in mid-September of 2022, and it's been the longest running machine I've ever had. I've bought several different brands of electric machines over the years. My very first one that I bought was when I was 20 years old, and it was a Kenmore I got on clearance at Sears, and it was a great machine. That one probably lasted me the second longest. But when I started getting into sewing costumes for my dance performances, I'm sewing through lots of sequins and all kinds of stuff, and it wore out the gears. For what it would cost to replace the gears, it was just worth it to buy a new machine. But because of the type of sewing I did on it, I found I had to replace my machine every 2 to 3 years. Some years I just couldn't afford to do it. And I did talk about this in a recent video where I showed some just basic hand stitching, and that's more important to learn how to do than learning how to run a sewing machine, because if you don't have electricity and a sewing machine is too expensive, hand stitching is something you can do anywhere at any time. You just need needle and thread. That's all you need. And it's good to know how to do that. So I did have 1 year where my machine stopped working because I'd wore it out, couldn't afford to go get a new one or the time to go look for one. And I had costumes to get done, so I sewed at least a couple dozen of them by hand. And it was great. It went faster than I thought it was, and I actually enjoyed it. But it still does take longer to go by hand. So having a machine when you got a lot to do is definitely handy. I bought this machine, like I said, 9.5 years ago. I was still teaching dance, still sewing costumes back then. And so it did sew a lot of costumes. I have made, I don't know how many denim quilts on this thing. And when I do denim quilts, I leave the pockets, belt loops, the leather tabs. Like I say, it's a pair of Levi's that has the leather tab on the back. And I sew right through those things with this machine, no problem. It's been a real workhorse for me. I've been able to sew anything on it. Easy maintenance. We've never had to have any repairs done on it. The only thing that Patrick has done is added some things to it, such as this thread holder right here. This is extra, and he made it so it had a nice thick peg on it to hold the thread that has the bigger holes in it. And I do still use these other ones as well. In fact, I think he added one of these other ones too. I can't remember. I know he's done a couple of modifications just for my sake, but it wasn't repairs, it was modifications. And so I love the fact that it has the clear door over the bobbin holder. And so you can see, you can easily look down in there and see. I love how easy this is to thread as opposed to any other type of machine that I've had when it comes to the bobbin. The top thread's super easy too, just as easy as anything else I've ever had, or easier even. And so, but you know, the pattern's the same, the down, up, down, and through the needle and all that. I do have a whole series of sewing videos, all using this very machine. I show how to make many things, including the little snack bags like I have laying out here with the zipper. And so I have a whole series, and in that series is also where I have the videos on how to use a treadle machine. So I'll link to the full series down below, but I'll still link to that, how to use a treadle machine separately, so it's easier to find if that's all you want to go to. But again, this is the Janome. It's called the T712, I think it is. If I get it wrong, I'll put it in text right here. The T stands for treadle, because they also have an electric version of this model. And this comes with quite a few different stitches. I'll take a photo here close up so you can see the different stitches that it comes with. But to be honest, I've never used anything other than the straight stitch and the zigzag stitch. Those are the two stitches I use the most. And in fact, I use the zigzag stitch most of all. I love this zigzag stitch. I do, whenever I make my patchwork skirts, I do all the hemming in the zigzag stitch. I do all the sewing in the zigzag stitch because to me, it has a better hold than just a straight stitch. So it's my preferred stitch for just about anything. I do use the straight stitch now and then for specific things, but usually I'm going to go for the zigzag, and I love that I can adjust it to any size I want. Or obviously you're going to have your knobs for the tightness of stitch as far as how close together they are. And I typically will have it set on a 3 for most things I do, but a lot of times, like when I'm doing the patchwork skirts or any kind of skirt where I'm putting the pockets in, the pockets I always put a much tighter stitch to make it stronger. So if people are putting heavier items in their pockets, it's going to hold well. I don't have to worry about it them ripping holes in the pockets. But it does have a lot of good stitch options. It does have the buttonhole option, but I've never used it. Again, when I do buttonholes, I just make my own buttonhole in the length and all that I want. I don't bother using the setup on here. So yeah, that's how I do quite a bit of my stuff, is with that zigzag stitch. So when I was looking for a treadle machine, though I really, really wanted an antique one because they're so beautiful and I love them, and you know those things are sturdy, all the ones I could see only had the straight stitch option and not the zigzag, which I rely heavily on for many things, especially anything where you're going to add stretch. I have no interest in having a serger, and I find I really like the zigzag stitch for anything that's going to stretch or just for extra hold. So that was good enough for me. But for those who like to have these extra stitches, they are there. And I mean, there's not a ton like you're going to find on a lot of your fancier machines, but there's plenty enough here. Most people would be happy with this. So again, we've never had to do any repairs in the 9.5 years. We've just had to do maintenance, you know, the oiling it every so often. And Patrick did do a video years ago where he'll take it sometimes take the air compressor and blow all the lint out of there for me, because the one thing I didn't like as much about this machine as all my other ones is usually this little door just opens up easily enough. But for this, you actually have to take the screw out. So it's just a little more frustrating. And then, you know, to get in there and brush things out. But at any rate, yeah, he just blows all the lint out, and then we oil it real good and it works great. Now, I've heard different thoughts about using WD-40 in a machine. I've always used WD-40. I found it worked best for me. And in fact, though some people say never use it, it was actually a guy that used to repair sewing machines that told me to use WD-40. And it's always been a great option for me because it also helps to blow out the lint and collect it and draw it out, as well as lightly oiling the machine so you don't end up getting a lot of gummy stuff built up in there like you're going to do with your heavier oils. I do want to talk a little bit about the table. This is, I don't know how old it was. It was my mother-in-law's before it was mine, but it is a treadle table, so I didn't have to go out and find one. I already had it. She gave it to me many years ago, and I would just set my sewing machine on top of it, my electric machine. but having this was definitely a blessing because it's already set up for a treadle. So I believe I also have a video on how to change out the belt and how to thread it through the machine itself. So that's in that playlist. Now, when it came to putting this in here, and I believe I show this in one of the videos, is that there is a little piece over here, this metal piece on the side. This machine didn't fit perfectly into this Singer treadle table because of that metal piece, but that metal piece moves. And that metal piece is where the leather belt goes through, and there's a hole on each side. So it's just pressed down. So it's at an angle rather than being flat like it should be. And it has not been an issue. It has not impeded my sewing. Again, 9.5 years later, still works great. And having that set in there like that, there's just something on this back side of the machine where it bumps against and causes just the front side to have to push down, not the whole thing. And thankfully that thing does move. So maybe it was made so that you could set different machines in there. Other than that, it fits in here perfect. It was easy to install, and it will be a little tricky putting the belt on the first time, but you'll get the hang of it because you do need to change it out every few years. And, but it's an easy process. They just stretch out over time. It's leather. That's what happens. They'll stretch out over time. Sometimes you can simply shorten the belt and then punch a new hole in it and then make it fit tight again. But you'll know when it's starting to get too loose because it will slip and it won't be turning the wheel as it should. Now I can give you the link to this sewing machine. It is a little more expensive than it was when I bought it 9.5 years ago, but that's a given. But the treadle table, finding the table, a lot of times I've seen them at garage sales, many times. A lot of times with a sewing machine, an antique sewing machine with it. But you can look on all kinds of places. You can look on eBay. I think probably even look on Etsy and Facebook Market. These are all different places where I've seen lots and lots of these treadle tables for sale. But as with anything, I always recommend start looking locally first. Whether it be your town has a secondhand store of some kind, look in there. And any kind of garage or yard sale, especially estate sales, look at those. You may be able to find one I would think you'd get the best price at any of those places rather than looking online. But I've seen really good deals on Facebook Market. If you're patient and you keep hunting, you might be able to find one. But if you're in a hurry, check your Facebook Market, check Etsy, check eBay, and see if you can find anything there. I'm sure places like Lehman's and some other place may still make them brand new, but I would think they'd probably be pretty expensive. So I would say start looking secondhand first. Anyway, I love this. I will never ever go back to an electric machine. From the first day I started using it, it didn't take me long to find my timing. Of course, I'm a drummer, so it wasn't that hard for me to figure out the timing with my feet and my hands and so on and so forth. But once you get their timing, it's easy, and I love the fact that I don't have to worry about if we don't have enough solar power or we have a power outage like happens several times every year here, especially in the winter time when our solar power is very low. I don't have to worry about that because this is totally off grid. So I can always depend on the sewing machine being here no matter what our power conditions are. So I highly recommend it, especially if you're one that's looking at going off grid anyway. I do recommend the Janome treadle machine. Antique ones are great, and you know, if you can get your hands on that one, I'd still like to get one as a backup, if nothing else. Again, a lot of them don't have that zigzag stitch. So if it's as important to you as it is to me, you may want to look into getting a machine like this instead, and then getting your hands on that treadle table. I think up front it's going to be an expense, but when I think about how much money I put into every 2 to 3 years having to buy a new machine, this has saved me a lot of money over the years. Not just in the electricity that I'm saving, but in the fact that I haven't had to replace it. If this was any other machine, I probably would have been through 2 or 3 of them by now. So again, happy with that. I recommend it. Look into it for yourself, and maybe you could even find some of these used. And so you wouldn't even have to buy one brand new and save yourself even more money. I'm not sure. I haven't tried to look for one like this used, but people buy stuff all the time thinking they're going to do this or that and the other thing, like buying pressure canners and then never using them and then turn around and selling them for cheap. So you can find all kinds of great stuff if you just keep looking. and save yourself some money that way. So anyway, I do hope that answered the questions that somebody had, and maybe some people who are interested just gave you a little bit more information. Again, don't forget to go down and check out the videos like how to use it, change the belt, so on and so forth, and different sewing projects that I have out there if you're interested in that. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.